Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, still stateside as the Vikings are practicing over in London. And yes, I do have some FOMO and some jealousy a bit for my cohorts that are over there. But this allows me to be here doing my thing, chatting with you guys as I always do, especially on Wednesday night. So I need your questions. I need your thoughts. I need your comments. And as always, the show presented by FanDuel here. But this is let's have a conversation tonight because there's not a ton of huge updates regarding the Minnesota Vikings. One about the offensive line that's going to make you roll your eyes, and about JJ McCarthy. And at the top of the list for news items is that Dillon Gabriel is going to start against the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll dive all into that. But I want to know what is on your mind. It's been a little bit of a rocky ride so far through the first 4 weeks of this season, and the Vikings have this one more game before they hit the bye week. Clearly, they need to be 3-2 coming out of this game against Cleveland, but what is that going to look like? What is Sunday's game going to look like with Dillon Gabriel starting against this Vikings defense that has had some issues at times and been unbelievable at other times, and this offense that also has really struggled to get going in ways that we haven't seen even with Nick Mullins or Josh Dobbs. I guess the end of the Josh Dobbs era was the last time that we saw the Vikings offense struggle like this, which has led to the FanDuel question of the day. I checked the over-under for this game, and it actually went down with Dillon Gabriel starting. So it went down to 35.5 points. I cannot remember the last time I've seen 35.5 points for the over-under for a game. So they are not expecting a huge output of scoring in this game between the Vikings and the Browns. So tell me this for the FanDuel question of the day: how many points do the Vikings need to score to win this game, with the over-under being 35.5? So Dillon Gabriel, let's talk about him first. I'm intrigued by Dillon Gabriel. I am horrified by the rest of the Cleveland Browns offense. When you look at the way that they have played so far this year, they are the third worst pass blocking unit in the entire NFL by PFF. Their receiving grade is dead last in the league by PFF with Joe Flacco in there. And I'm sure that Flacco was part of the problem as much as the wide receivers, but if you look at their numbers, it is not so great. So Harold Fannon's an interesting young player. Went to Bowling Green, I believe, caught 1 million passes there. David Njoku is pretty good. Jerry Jeudy's had his moments in the league. But aside from that, it has been a horror show and tons of drops. 11 drops so far this year for the Cleveland Browns offense, 4 of them from Jerry Jeudy, who just has become a very mid-wide receiver that was supposed to be in that Justin Jefferson class, the runaway, right? That was him. And he was supposed to be like the runaway best receiver in a great receiving class, the route running brilliant specialist, but it's been hands that have been an issue for him. So he's just sort of just a guy, but they need him to be the number 1 wide receiver. Cedric Tillman is averaging less than 10 yards per catch there. Isaiah Bond, the rookie from Texas, I think 7 catches. I mean, they just have not gotten much in their passing game. So Dillon Gabriel takes over a group that can throw to the tight end, I guess. And when it comes to their blocking, what a horror show that is. If you think the Vikings offensive line has been bad, some of these grades are mind-blowing, including, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Cornelius, and I know they played the Packers, so they have Micah Parsons, and this is not easy. Also played Aiden Hutchinson. But Cornelius Lucas, their tackle, has allowed 28 quarterback pressures so far this year. That's crazy. So I think I don't know if they're going to start Cam Robinson. They just traded for him, but to give up 28 pressures in 4 games is absolutely wild. If you give up 5 in a game, that's really bad. Like you need as a tackle 5 or 6 in a game is an atrocious afternoon. This is averaging almost 6 per game so far this season. I mean, that's a lot. So I don't think Cornelius Lucas, I think he's the reason that they traded for Cam Robinson, but good luck to Dillon Gabriel. So he's entering a situation that is clearly one of the worst in the league, but he also has my interest. I know that he's small, but he's got an arm that's pretty strong, and he is an accurate quarterback from what I saw in college and the preseason. I think he's going to struggle a ton with what Brian Flores is going to throw at him coverage-wise and trying to pick apart different coverages and make adjustments. This is not Aaron Rodgers at the line of scrimmage, my friends. This is going to be a kid who's never played before. He's going to have a lot of struggles there. I think he's a pretty good athlete. He could throw on the move, and something that he does quite well, and that if you're going to be an undersized quarterback, you absolutely have to do, is he throws with anticipation, meaning he throws before guys are out of their breaks. He throws wide receivers into areas. You saw him do this a ton when he was in college. I watched a little bit of him in the preseason. He just has that, whatever it is, circuited in his brain where he knows that he's got to get the ball out early. And he also probably knows at this point that he's not going to be able to see everything perfectly at his height and has to throw to areas, has to be locked into the offense. And I think there's a lot of proof in the fact that Dillon Gabriel is QB2 for this team. If the world had their way, you can absolutely bet that Shaduer Sanders would be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. If the hype machine on the internet was making a vote, it would be 99 to 1% because everybody wants to see Shaduer Sanders. So the fact that he beat him out and seemingly handily in training camp and preseason with the whole world and possibly their ownership, which may have nudged them to draft Shaduer Sanders. We don't know that for sure, but I think that judging from previous quarterback decisions, that's possible that the Browns did that the coaching staff saying we'd rather have this other kid who was drafted higher. That's true. Be the guy. I think it at least says something about what he's done behind the scenes. All of that said, what the Vikings did to Jake Browning is what they should do to Dillon Gabriel, only probably even worse. Can it be worse? Maybe. I guess Jake didn't fumble the ball all those times, so that wasn't Jake Browning's fault. But it should be like that. It should be constant pressure, constant confusion, quarterback scrambling for his life most of the time, and making big mistakes that turn into turnovers. We've seen that many, many times from inexperienced quarterbacks playing against the Minnesota Vikings. This is not any type of test really for this Vikings defense other than, can you write your name at the top of the SATs to pass? Can you do the bare minimum against a rookie quarterback and get the ball a couple times and hold them down, and you'll be fine with the amount of talent on this defense, the confusion on this defense. Last week, you could say that a good amount of it was the game plan for Pittsburgh, a good amount of it was Aaron Rodgers, and a good amount of it was the fact that they got to play from ahead because the Vikings let them for the entire day. That should not happen against the Cleveland Browns, but there's the you never know factor. I mean, the New York Giants played Jackson Dart, and the Chargers kind of had no idea what to expect in that game, and Jackson Dart kind of looked like a rookie was playing in a running offense, and they ran Dart a lot and certainly ran him into a lot of hits a lot, but they played an offense that wasn't really expected. It wasn't really on tape, and it surprised the Chargers. Not that Dart had this incredible day, but it seemed to throw them off a little bit, and he was able to lead some scoring drives. Is there some of that because Gabriel is new and he's young and he's got a live arm and we don't know what to expect? Whereas with Joe Flacco, I mean, you knew what to expect. Joe was mega cooked, could not move at all, wasn't seeing it down the field, was lowering his eyes and taking hits, turning the ball over constantly. He was not in a position as Joe Flacco 2025, somehow still in the NFL, to deal with what they have going on up front. it's possible that the Vikings did get the worst side of this. I mean, you would think that just logically speaking, a third round draft pick kid coming in for the first time in London, the least ideal place to start against the Minnesota Vikings defense, that would be kind of an automatic, and it should be. And it should be a very simple test to pass. At the same time, there is intrigue. There is something that we don't know here. And I saw Shaduer Sanders' reaction to that today, which was to mime at the media, which I think tells you everything you need to know about why one guy is starting and the other isn't, because one acted professionally this offseason, the other got speeding tickets and went viral a bunch of times. So I think they made the right choice for who is QB2. And Sanders just keeps showing everybody that he's exactly what all the critics thought that he was. And apparently he was responding to something Rex Ryan said, which again, QB3 responding to the haters is just not something that's going to get you very far in the NFL. But maybe we will see Shaduer Sanders, depending on the way that this goes. If it's going badly for Cleveland, it's altogether possible that Sanders could make his debut, and we'll see if his vocal cords work if he ends up getting out there. But just with the Vikings playing against the Browns here, you get the sense of why the NFL spent some time around Shaduer Sanders and said, I don't think he's going to be a first-round draft pick because of nonsense like this, and him spouting off about how he's better than other quarterbacks in the league just a week ago. Just be everything everybody said. Like, if you were going to prove everybody wrong, this is not the way, and yet here he is. Would you ever see Max Brosmer do stuff like this? Absolutely not. I can tell you that. So not surprising that it's Dillon Gabriel and not Shaduer Sanders. Let me get to a couple other things. JJ McCarthy still not practicing today, which I guess makes you wonder, like, how far along is this injury? Trying to judge how serious the injury was, the fact that he was able to finish the game, but then they said they want him to be 100% before they put him out there to practice. I am surprised that still he hasn't been able to get out and practice. If he doesn't practice this week, are we talking about for sure that he's 100% coming off of the bye week? You would think so. You would think so with this kind of injury. But maybe we'll see him practice over the next 2 days and be the backup on Sunday, or maybe it will still be Max Brosmer. I guess we don't really know. I still would think that after the bye week, you've got a long time there before you have to play again against the Philadelphia Eagles. I would like to see McCarthy be the starting quarterback no matter what. He was your QB1 over Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. He was your QB1 over Sam Darnold, who is playing great football right now. And he should still be your QB1 despite a bad game against the Atlanta Falcons. He needs more sample size to even really know. And if Carson Wentz doesn't have a great game or he has a great game, it doesn't really matter to me because it's beating the Cleveland Browns. It should be a preseason game for you against Cleveland. That's what it should be. I'm not saying nothing is a guarantee when you're playing a backup quarterback and you just lost to a mediocre Pittsburgh team and you got sacked as many times as you did, but this should be the easiest game on your schedule. I made the golf course analogy before where, when you go to the 18 holes and it's like the hardest hole on the course and the easiest hole on the course. What's the hardest? The easiest is they put 18, I think, right? So this would be 18. Like, this is the easiest game that you're going to play. This is the easiest hole on the course. This is a 150-yard straight on with no sand and no water, par 3 with a big flat green. Like, that's what this game is. That doesn't mean you still can't hit it in the woods, though, because they still have Myles Garrett. They still have Malik Collins. They still have a lot of talent on the defensive side. But this is one where you should win. And regardless of how you win, JJ McCarthy should be the guy who starts when they come back. I would have felt differently had Carson Wentz put up 40 points on the Steelers and they rolled and they were headed to 4-1 and they were coming back. I would have said, look, you got to win at 4-1. He's playing great. Let him go until the wheels come off and let's see what happens. And maybe it's one of those seasons. But losing that game shifted my take on that I think you have to go back to JJ McCarthy, even if Wentz has a really good day against Cleveland. But McCarthy's got to be 100% healthy. And if this lingers in any way past this week, if we still hear about him missing practice going into Philadelphia, then you've really got to ask some questions about, like, man, this is another injury that he's going to be having to deal with for a while. I don't suspect that's going to be the case the way that Kevin O'Connell has talked about it, but we shall see as he gets back to practice. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. O'Connell hinted at that potential. The other offensive line injury, Michael Jurgens did not practice today. We will also have to see, does he practice Thursday? Does he practice Friday? If not, you could be looking at Blake Brandel at center and possibly Joe Huber at guard, along with Will Fries, Justin School, and then Christian Darasaw. That is one heck of a patchwork offensive line if Jurgens is not up to full strength. And even if he is back, he's still dealing with an injury that forced him to miss practice. You don't want your center missing any practice when he's got to be on the same page as your quarterback. And if he's missing practice, that means that hamstring injury is fairly serious, at least could be a problem in the game. And again, you are playing one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL. This is going to be a big challenge for the Vikings here. Although I would be kind of interested, I guess, to see if Blake Brandel can snap the ball. Jurgens was okay against Cincinnati. It's Cincinnati. They're clearly one of the worst teams in the NFL as far as a defense and a defensive line. But maybe I'm acting like the guy who always wants the backup quarterback or backup lineman, or, hey, isn't there somebody better on the bench? But at least Brandel, has played a lot in the NFL. Maybe he could be a halfway decent center. I don't know, but it's going to be really difficult to get them. What's the opposite of discombobulated? Because that's what they've been on the offensive line. Bobulated, like get together on the same page. How can you even do that with all the travel and the distractions of London and the scheduling and all that stuff? And you get a couple of practices, and then you've got to just throw this group out there when it comes to running the outside zone stuff. For example, against Cincinnati, when they had most of their line, they looked awesome in doing that. But when you run outside zone, everybody has to be on the same page. You can't just be like, hey, everybody run that way and block. Like, it's one of those things that has to be really synced up. Well, how are you going to do that with so many guys out? So then maybe they're looking at easier run type of stuff for the guys to do blocking wise, but that's not the strength of your running back, Jordan Mason. If you don't get ahead of the sticks, then you're on third down. And I'm just looking at this data today about the Vikings and sacks. I'm trying to parse apart why the Vikings take so many sacks under KOC. And one of the main reasons is third downs, that they throw on third down so often, whether it's sometimes it's third and short and they throw, but they are one of the top teams in the league since KOC got here, top 3 or 4 in terms of total passes on third down, which is when the opposing defense, that's also because they haven't run effectively during KOC's time, the opposing defense can run anything they want. And I found an interesting stat that they've been sacked when the opposing team blitzes on third down. This is from True Media. When they blitz on the third down, they get sacked 15% of the time. The Vikings do when the opposing team blitzes on third down. And that is what? It's a quarterback stat. It's an O-line stat. It's a lot of things. It's a KOC stat, but it tells a story there that if they are playing from behind the sticks, they're going to have to throw a lot, and that leaves you open to big negative plays, which they've had a lot of this year on third downs. 10 of their 18 sacks have come on third down so far this year. Bottom line, they really could use Michael Jurgens. If Jurgens is in, if he can get up to 100% health by this game, he's worked with Carson Wentz at least since Wentz got here as the backup. When McCarthy was starting, they were working together in practice. Brandel has been a starting lineman before. You're trying to survive Justin School on that side. Actually, I'm curious if, I got to look this up, if Myles Garrett has, how much he is lined up on the offense's right side. This is why we love having all the data here, because he had barely ever this year. Only 7 times has he lined up on the opposite side. He's been the right defensive end the entire time. So him versus Darasaw is, heavyweight prize fighters there. But at least he likes to be on that spot, and he's not a guy that moves back and forth too often. So Justin School maybe can breathe a little easier going into this game. Still, I mean, it's a patchwork offensive line if Jurgens is in there with 3 backups. It's not the worst thing maybe I've ever seen. I think School is probably a little safer over there on the right side. But if Jurgens is out, and now you're talking about undrafted free agent who's never played before and has got to take on a nasty interior D-line, that could be tough sledding for this Vikings offense. So they need Michael Jurgens to get back to full health. So that's where we're at right now with the sort of news items there. And now we can have a conversation and have a chat about what we think the Vikings need to do to beat the Browns, the bigger picture here of this team being 2-2 at this point. If they get a win here, you're 3-2 at the bye week, which is not a catastrophe, but it's also not a success, where I felt that they needed to be 4-1 to really survive the tough stretch. At the same time, I wrote about this a little yesterday over at purpleinsider.football. Feel free to sign up. That the path kind of got easier with some of the bad things that have befallen teams that they're going to play against, including even the Green Bay Packers. Although I did watch back, somebody clipped together all the reps of Micah Parsons against the Dallas Cowboys because he graded extremely high by PFF, and wow, did he deserve that grade. But the Packers still gave up 40 points in that game because of their coverage. And that was something that we talked about when they acquired Micah Parsons, was he is as great as it comes in the NFL, but they still have coverage issues there with Green Bay, and the Chargers have line issues, and Lamar Jackson is banged up, and the Ravens defense has been horrible, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So there might be an open door if you get to 3-2 to win half of those games and then get to the point where it's a little bit lighter at the end of the season, and then you have your big games at the end and you've got a shot. But that's a long time to go from now. But there is a path that has sort of opened up with some things happening to those teams that we kind of looked at as invincible, and now they don't look quite as invincible after a few weeks of, the NFL being the NFL. So questions, thoughts, and comments. Reminder that FanDuel question of the day is the over-under for the game is a hilarious 35.5 points. I guess you could toss in whether you take the over or under. How many points do the Vikings need to win this game? My answer for that is I'm going to say 17. I think that they need 17 points to win this football game against the Cleveland Browns. I just would be very, very surprised if they could find a way to score more than 17 points. So let me go all the way back to some of your answers there, which is Mr. Mayor's got 16, Zoomer Kev 17, Mama's got 21, K-Mac 17, Trona Guy's got 3. I think they might need more than 3, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Can you imagine if this is, the London fans have gotten wiser, but the early London games, people used to talk about how they would love when there was punts, because it's guys kicking the ball, and that's what they were looking for over there. So there might be a lot of that. Ryan Wright might have a day. Will Reichard, field goals are in the news these days with the K-balls. So there might be some serious kicking going on in this game. And we did see a 3-0 game before with the Vikings and the Raiders. So let's start with Seabakes27 says, with CJ Ham slated to return, excited to see him at center this week. That's good. That's good. I don't think it's the craziest thing in a game like this to have Josh Oliver and CJ Ham on the field at the same time, because they need all the blocking help that they can get. And this was a really smart thing that Kevin O'Connell did in the past. And I wrote a story about this. I talked with Jerome Felton for it, and Johnny Stanton, a couple of former fullbacks, and they loved this, that Kevin O'Connell used CJ Ham on third downs, on obvious passing downs, as a blocker, as a pure blocker, and he was really terrific at it. It's one of those things where I know some people kind of, CJ Ham, he's still on the roster, but he was excellent at it. If you go back to the San Francisco game in 2023 that they won and shocked San Francisco, he had 4 or 5 plays where they were sending guys, or Nick Bosa got past his guy and Ham was able to step up and help. And it was enormous for Kirk Cousins in that game. And Cousins played great. They actually do need that. Jordan Mason is, I think, serviceable at pass protection, probably not great. Aaron Jones is okay, but he's not a guy you want. I know he's out, but he's not a guy you want protecting all the time. Xavier Scott, I'm really impressed with Xavier Scott. I think he's a dude. I think he could be like, for those old school people, Amp Lee style. David Palmer, like one of those players out of the backfield that sneaks out, plays wide receiver, running back. It's kind of a cool role. If I had him on Madden in 2005, I would have loved using him. But he's not somebody you want standing in there trying to pass protect. So that actually could matter, that CJ Ham is coming back if Kevin O'Connell decides to use him in that role, though I don't think he will be playing center. Mr. Mayor, I have not done one of the international games. The 2017, we didn't budget for that when I worked in radio. And then just as long as I've been doing this, I've had to learn over the years how to do the accounting part of this job and the business spreadsheet part of this job. And one of the things you have to kind of add up, as much as I want to go, is does it make sense business wise? Like, is the revenue that I might earn from being over there and being on the spot, does it sort of match up with the cost? And you think about it this way, like I'm going to go to, the plan is, and this depends on how the season goes a little bit, whether it'll be worth it, but the plan is to go to Dallas, to go to Seattle, the NFC North games, go to Ford Field, go to LA. All those combined would be one of these trips. So it just didn't quite gel. I did send Jonathan Harrison over there. It was his dream to go over to London. I think, when did we do that? 2021, I think. Jonathan is the producer of this show and does all the behind the scenes stuff, all the thumbnails. Like, Jonathan works so hard. And so I kind of concocted a way to get him over there. He wanted to go to a soccer game. He's a huge soccer guy. So we did figure that out once, but I have not done it myself. And I do have very serious FOMO. C-Bake says, with these two offenses, we might get a repeat of I love that you call it the Oakland game. And I agree with still calling them Oakland. Zoomer Kev, Joe Flacco gives the Browns the best chance to win this game. I don't know about that. I think that Joe Flacco did an amazing finesse job on the Cleveland Browns here by knowing he would be good enough to win the job over the quarterbacks that they had. But I don't think he really wanted to play football this year, from what I've seen. I mean, Flacco has been as bad as, like, he's been bad during his career, but as bad as any quarterback has ever been. He's averaging 5.1 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 6 picks. I mean, wow. And he's been sacked 9 times, a 60.3 quarterback rating. That would be bad in any era. That would be bad in 1972. That's how horrible he has been. I think they actually have a better chance to win with Dillon Gabriel. There's just that possibility that the kid's got something to him and he plays even okay football. If he went 17 for 28 with 220 yards, that would be way better than anything that Joe Flacco has brought them. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be good in this game. I think he's going to come out of it maybe preferring to play for the Oregon Ducks, where they just have great players and the games are much easier. At the same time, Flacco is bringing nothing to the table, not even giving them a chance to score any points. So I think that Gabriel does actually give them a better chance to win. Not that I think he's actually going to do that. Mr. Mayor says, we know the Browns can rush the passer. How are they against the run? How effective can Mason be with this line? Yeah, that's the question, because when you ask about how effective they are against the run, I can look that up. They're number one. They are the number one graded by PFF, number one graded by PFF team against the run. Detroit was able to run against them somewhat last week. Let me pull up how that turned out. How did Detroit run against them last week? Yeah, pretty good by the numbers. 15 carries for 91 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. He needed almost 4.5 yards per carry after contact in order to, that's a lot. 4.5 yards per carry after contact. That's 4.5 yards per carry is an average per carry for anybody in the league. he had to do it after contact. So he had to be special in order to get a good day against Cleveland. And they wore down too. It was terrible. And Joe Flacco was getting sacked every play. What did Flacco do in this game? He threw 2 interceptions, 16 for 34 passing. Oh my goodness. Somehow had 4 big time throws still. He must have just been wow. Okay. So I haven't watched this game back because why, but I'm going to have to take a look now at how he ended up with 4 big time throws, 2 interceptions, and 16 for 34. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I've just sort of finished up analyzing what happened against the Steelers, which again, purpleinsider.football did a whole film breakdown with all the data as well over there. But wow, that is a horrendous game for him. C. Bakes, if you were in Matt Lafleur's shoes against Dallas, do you settle for the tie or take one more chance to win? If I'm in his shoes, and I have to say that it's much harder than it is sitting in a press box, sitting in your house, playing your Madden. But if I'm in his shoes, there's no way I manage that last drive like that. He just let the clock run and run and run and run on him, and then looked up, and he admitted to this and was just like, oh, the game's almost over. So he kind of lost his mind, got lost in the game at the end there. And we see this happen from a lot of coaches over the years where you go, what happened there? And it's just, I don't know. It got away from him and he lost control of the clock and they almost screwed it up. I would have taken the tie though. Yeah, I would have taken the tie in that situation because if you were 2 yards away, okay, maybe I go for the win and just say, whatever, if we lose this one. But in an NFC North that a half a point there could end up getting you a tiebreaker or giving you a slight edge over the Detroit Lions. They already have a win over the Lions. They had to factor that in. Like, you already have a win over the Lions, so you've got a tie break there. This might give you one more extra push. If you end up with the same number of wins, then, there you go. I think you have to take that. You have to take just half. They almost might come up. I guess you could look at it the other way too, that you might also end up half a win short of winning the division as well. But from where they were on the field, I don't think you can go for it there to try to win because the chances are just not that great. Stephanie says, is he better than Cooper Rush was supposed to be? If we're talking about Dillon Gabriel or Joe Flacco, I assume we're talking about Dillon Gabriel. Cooper Rush is, I think you're probably connecting this with the Cooper Rush game from 2021. Cooper Rush is a good quarterback. He's won a lot of games in his career. He's going to start likely for the Ravens if Lamar Jackson's banged up. If Cooper Rush was starting this game, I would say don't underestimate him. He can make plays. With Dillon Gabriel, you just have no idea what you're going to get with him at all. I mean, I have no idea. I watched a lot of him in college. I liked him as a prospect in a draft that I didn't like a lot of the quarterbacks. And I was like, okay, this kid can play a little bit, even if he's short. So I'm kind of like a Gabriel guy, I suppose. I think that he has got some talent to him, but Cooper Rush has been around for so long. That's the thing that is going to be tough for Dillon Gabriel, is that he's got no experience and it's a strange environment and it's a weird week where they've got to travel over to a team that's already been there waiting for him and had time to game plan and all that sort of stuff. He is in as big of a disadvantage and then with personnel as any quarterback making their first start ever. George says, get ready for dump off, screen, short passing. I swear Flores defense is a cheat code, or the cheat code is in the dump off to the flat, which is always open for 5 to 7 yards. Yeah, so it has been. However, in the big games that we think about for what you're talking about, those quick passes into the flat, checks over the middle, underneath stuff, who's usually at quarterback when that happens? Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, it's been Aaron Rodgers last week. It's usually been good quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, the time in 2023 that he threw like 48 passes and completed 40 of them. It's not often that it has been poor quarterbacks who have taken advantage of this defense. Jake Browning, I guess, did it in the fourth quarter of a game in Cincinnati in 2023, but I can't think of too many other times where quarterbacks that were inexperienced or not that great had going against Flores' defense or guys who had never seen it before and then just did great against it instantly. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, they have Fannin and Njoku. Those two guys can play. And I imagine that that's what they're going to try to take advantage of. Ivan Pace, I think, has had a really tough start to this season. And if you're looking for an edge, potentially, you've got these two tight ends. Fannin is a good player. He was somebody that I saw one night during Maction randomly, and they put his stats on the screen. I thought it was a joke. Like, his college stats were so insane. And he's transferred a little bit over that to the NFL. So you're right about that, George, that they could and will use a lot of quick stuff underneath and try to attack the middle. That's where you maybe miss Andrew Van Ginkel a little bit. Because he was so good at deception, dropping back into these throwing lanes, kind of fooling quarterbacks into where he was going to be. And as much as Dallas Turner is trying to emulate his role, I haven't seen it look, he's dropped back into coverage a good amount, but I haven't seen it look like Van Ginkel with the pre-snap stuff where quarterbacks are just totally surprised when they drop back. And that actually could have played a role in Aaron Rodgers being so successful last week, is the fact that Van Ginkel, who has incredible football instincts and understands so well what other teams are trying to do, what they're seeing, how they're going to attack, that he's really good at getting his hands on those underneath passes. You're totally right about what Cleveland's strategy is going to be. Now, whether the Vikings strategy is going to be similar, that I don't know, because no matter who's been playing offensive line, we've rarely seen that outside of the opening script. And that would be my suggestion for Kevin O'Connell this week is the opening scripts are great and they get the ball out of Wentz's hands fast, but you got to stick with that stuff. And don't be afraid to go back to the same ideas because it seemed like last week, as soon as they got behind, that all of a sudden they went back to kind of the old way of doing it with Sam Darnold, which was looking downfield a lot, and we didn't see the ball come out very quickly. And Carson Wentz, he's still going to try to make some plays from time to time, and that's where you get into a lot of trouble. So the Vikings need to follow that as well. Let's see. Mr. Mayor, we need to talk about ties. Why are people so crazy hating them? I would get rid of the regular season overtime and 15 ties a year. I look, as a person who watched hockey from a very, very young age when there used to be ties, I'm okay with ties. If the two teams scored the same number of points, then we all go home. Like, I don't know. The whole world plays soccer. They're okay with ties. We just have this thing in American sports where we cannot tolerate a tie. And I even thought that for baseball, where extra innings is great, but if they wanted to call it a tie after 12, okay, that's fine. I'd rather have that than some screwy catcher pitching out there or whatever, and or a guy being put on second base. I'd rather just call it a tie. And I feel the same way here, where I think it would create some really entertaining endings to games with teams scrambling and panicking, especially as the season went on and you needed to win, that the endings would be really fun. I don't need them to all line up at the 2-yard line and try to throw it in and then have that determine a game. And I probably didn't need both teams to score, at least in the regular season. I understood that in the playoffs, where you can't have Brett Favre and Josh Allen sitting on the sideline, not getting a chance to touch the ball. I get that part of it. And in the playoffs, they play till someone's eliminated. In the NFL, it would be ludicrous probably to just keep playing and playing and playing. You're talking about already risking guys getting hurt, but then it just gets insane after a while. I'm okay. I'm okay with ties. I don't need ties to go away. So, Zoomer Kev says, my friend is a Browns fan. Wow. I am sorry for your friend. My uncle is a Browns fan. And, I don't understand how anyone has stuck through this. That's loyal. That's real, true loyalty. I saw the photo of the jersey with all the quarterbacks on it, and it's actually filled up. I think this is 43 starting quarterbacks since they came back into the league. And for Christmas in 1999, I got a Tim Couch jersey. So that's still somewhere in a box in my house that I've kept it with me because I think it's funny. Like, yeah, when the Browns came back, I was so excited that they were coming back into the league, and my uncle was a big fan of them, and he was excited. And I thought, like, this is great. They got this young quarterback, and I'm going to follow this team. And I asked my parents for the jersey. They got it for me, and that did not work out very well. Kelly Holcomb had that one playoff game, and that was it. The Browns' history is amazing. And I could see why there are so many old school Browns fans, because in the 80s, what an incredible run of tragedies of times that they got so close. The Brian Sipe interception, the Ernest Biner fumble. Bernie Kosar was such a fun player, but since they've come back, it's been a rough ride. Josh Cribbs was cool as heck. They had Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer. Seneca Wallace. It's just been so random. And now Dillon Gabriel. Anyway, Zoomer Kev said he was talking about Dillon Gabriel looking good before the benching. I wouldn't put it past them to beat the Vikings. I wouldn't put it past them only because Myles Garrett plays for the other team and they beat the Packers. So you can't say that it's impossible. The Packers gave that game away by throwing a horrific interception, but you could see the Vikings doing that. That's the only scenario where they lose, is if they turn the ball over 3 or 4 times and you get strip sacked, you get bad interceptions. It's kind of what happened last week. You get 2 bad interceptions where you're moving the ball and looking to score, and then you have sacks all over the place. Like, that could happen again. And they might not need a high amount of points to beat the Vikings if Dillon Gabriel is even halfway competent. But there are some things I like about him. And I think if he was 6'2", he would have been a first-round draft pick this year, just with his talent. Kerpluppy says, I don't see how we score a touchdown against this defense. Are we going to see an 0-3 or 3-0? Yeah, Raiders versus Vikings game. Yeah, the Josh Dobbs. I wouldn't be surprised. At the same time, like, if the Vikings get turnovers. So this defense is great, but against Detroit, the game ends 34-10. Against Baltimore, it was maybe 41-13 or something. So because they are so inept offensively, you get a lot of bites at the apple. And if you get turnovers from Dillon Gabriel, you get a strip sack, you get an interception, you're going to have a chance to score some points. I do think Will Reichard better swing the leg and be ready to kick quite a few times. But the idea with this offensive line, that they can move the ball and move the ball and move the ball, that it does seem like a tough task. That's where what I would like Kevin O'Connell to do in this game is display some patience. Let's say you throw 3 passes, run 3 times in your first drive, and the farthest the passes travel is 5 yards down the field. It's an underneath pass to TJ Hawkinson, which just disappeared out of last week's playbook. And I know he had the one ball that maybe he could have caught behind him, but where is TJ Hawkinson the best? And I know he was chipping, people bring that up, but he wasn't chipping as much as you think. And where is the little dunk in the middle of a zone over the middle of the field that gets you 6 yards? It's okay to get a 6-yard pass that's moving the ball in the right way. The play that they ran, a little swing pass to Jefferson, it's okay to use that. I think what O'Connell did last week was he saw, and when you watch the tape, it's kind of incredible. He saw all these holes in the Pittsburgh zone and was just, I think, slobbering at how open he could get some of these receivers with the way they were playing. They were playing their safeties way back. They were sometimes playing single high, which, if you play a single high safety against the Vikings, you get shredded every single time because it leaves Jefferson open. So I think that he was seeing those defenses and being like, yes, the looks are there. Let's hit these explosives. But what wasn't factored in is that they couldn't block it and Wentz couldn't get it out. And this week, I think you have to take a little bit of a different approach of you're not going to have time to throw those balls. So no matter what it looks like coverage-wise, you can't do that. And this might be a game where Myles Price, Ty Felton, get them in the game, run them an end around, run them a screen, get the ball in their hands, use Xavier Scott again. It's okay to win a game where you have to throw 30 times to get 200 yards because you're not pushing it down the field. The win still counts if you do it that way, and they might have to. But we've really never seen them commit to a game like that. I can't remember one. Maybe Kirk committed himself to games like that at times, but I as far as play calling goes, can't remember too many times that has actually happened. Adam says, prediction, the Vikings trade for Kirk Cousins over the bye week. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's no scenario that I could think of where they would do that. Unless McCarthy's ankle is really bad and Carson Wentz got hurt, then I think they would maybe go for the season-saving type of swing. But if you're Atlanta, I don't know if you want to give up Kirk at this point. You're already into the season. The checks are already paid. And if Penix goes down, you've got a backup quarterback with a ton of experience. Maybe you'd rather just have that with the rate that quarterbacks get hurt, of just this second option just in case, rather than trading him away. If I were them, I would be like, you know what, what's a sixth round pick or whatever. We'd rather just have a backup who could come in and win us a couple of games if Penix gets hurt. So I'm not sure that they would want to do that, but I really can't think of a scenario. How about this? The only scenario would be if Wentz were to, let's say Wentz plays fine and they win the game, but he gets hurt, and McCarthy is boarding the plane back to America and tweaks his high ankle sprain, and he's going to be out 6 more weeks. I would still actually rather have them just start Max Brosmer and have Desmond Ridder be the back. So I really actually can't. I tried there, but I actually can't come up with a scenario where that would make any sense, because Max Brosmer knows the offense and he might actually be good at football. So, I mean, some of you last week were like, why aren't they playing Max Brosmer? Like, I don't want him in this situation just yet. But one thing he does really well is get rid of the football. That is really noticeable, how well he gets rid of the football. Let's see. Mr. Mayer says, I wasn't watching the Giants game closely, but every time I looked at the screen, it seemed like Dart was making an awesome play. It was a fun game. I was red zoning it, so I didn't see every play, but I saw a lot of the drives and highlights and stuff. And he was, I mean, Sam Monson compared it to a Tim Tebow win, and I think that's a perfect description. He was making some plays. He was running. He was taking hits. He's bouncing back up. He's playing with fire. Yeah, I mean, the Giants, this is a crazy thing about the New York Giants, is that they got rid of Saquon Barkley. They got absolutely slaughtered by everybody, but I think that their front office has actually handled a lot of things the right way. Even Jackson Dart not starting week 1, I would advocate. I don't love the idea of Russell Wilson being there, but I would still advocate them getting Dart in after seeing a few weeks of how this goes and getting a little extra experience before he was thrown into the fire. It's probably still going to be a rough ride without Malik Neighbors, but think about the players they've drafted high. That D-line was insane in that game. Abdul Carter is a freak. Like, tanking last year for Abdul Carter, tanking the year before for Malik Neighbors, who will come back next year, be great. Drafting a quarterback. They've signed some defensive players. They've got Brian Burns, who's still good. I think that they've handled a lot of things actually well, and they just need that quarterback position to come together. Adam says the Adam Thielen trade is going to go down as one of the worst trades in Vikings history. I don't know if that's possible to put that in there. We know what's number one, but beyond that, like, what are the worst Vikings trades? Is trading away Randy Moss in that conversation. I know he didn't work out for the Raiders, but he sure did for the New England Patriots. And drafting Troy Williamson, I think that's pretty bad. That goes up there. I personally think trading a 5th round pick for a kicker / punter who didn't make the team, trading a 4th for Chris Herndon, this was the equivalent, I think some will say, based on the math, that it is the equivalent of a 4th round draft pick for Adam Thielen. I mean, is it bad if it keeps going like this? Yes. If he plays 10 snaps a game and ends up with 12 catches on the season, that's a pretty bad loss for what you expected it to be. I think that it will get going a little bit better. I think he will be a bigger part of this team as we go forward and make some big catches and maybe still end up with 20, 25 receptions. If he has a few big catches along the way, then it's still a success to give up not that much for him. But at this moment, there's no question about it. This was not how it was supposed to play out. He was supposed to step in for the first 3 games and produce for them. But also, I don't know how much of that is Adam Thielen's fault. The ball did not get to him. They didn't stay on the field. They didn't throw it. The quarterbacks held on to the ball. They took sacks. They had a lot of things going on in terms of context. But as of right now, no, Carolina is on the right side of that, but it's definitely not one of the worst trades ever. I don't even think it matches up with some of the bad trades recently. The kicker / punter one, for as long as I've covered the team, that's the worst trade they've made. Hands down. A 5th round draft pick. That's very similar, 5th rounder, for what they got for Thielen. For somebody who had never kicked before because they were panicking, because Dan Bailey was struggling in training camp. I mean, that's ridiculous. So I wouldn't say that it's up there just yet. I think that's going to have to play out. They have only played 4 games. So there's a long way to go before we decide whether Adam Thielen trade was not good, but it didn't do what it was supposed to do. That I agree with you. What it was supposed to do was get them through until Jordan Addison came back, and it didn't. How much of that is on him and how much of that was on the quarterback play and the offensive line and the way the games played out, it's kind of hard to figure out. He did have a nice first down catch the other day, and actually it was a play that I'd love to see them run more, which is just a quick slant to Adam Thielen that gets them 6 yards. When I see that, I sort of just gesture like this, do this, like this thing that you just did, more of that, because that's going to get you first downs. And if the only way that they were going to be able to use Adam Thielen was running deep routes or something, then he wasn't the guy to go get. If you want him to be a possession receiver, treat him like a possession receiver. KFT says, Gabriel against Flores defense has the makings of a shutout. It does. Yeah, it does. I mean, when you just think about a young quarterback, no offensive line whatsoever, receivers very suspect. The defense is not 100% healthy, but it's close enough to cause a lot of problems. It does have the makings of a very tough day for a quarterback who's never played before. That being said, what is this? Says odds of Gabriel lights us up are very, very high. Those 2 comments were back to back. And those are the 2 Vikings fans on each shoulder right there. Is the one that thinks no matter what, this team is going to win the next game and they're going to get back on track. And then the other one that says, oh, a new quarterback starting against the Vikings, that means they'll definitely win. That's funny that those were back to back, but RJ Gabriel, may God be with you. I mean, it's his, look, I respect Kevin Stefanski overall, just in general. I mean, I covered him here. I talked to him a number of times. He is a highly respected coach in football, but with this roster, I don't know what is supposed to happen there. It's really crazy that this same coach could win Coach of the Year. What did he win twice? Coach of the Year? Hey, if you do anything with the Browns, you're Coach of the Year. But he is in a tough spot. There is only so much you could do. And this is how I feel in some ways about the Vikings offense, where, of course, it's way more talented in the backfield, at tight end, at wide. Well, the tight end might be on the Browns, but receiver, weapons overall, much better. Darasaw is still in this game. The Vikings have a lot more to work with, but the way the offensive line is, you really see, if you get to a certain level, if you get to code red with the offensive line, it's really hard to do anything. They have been in code red a few times this year, and the game we saw the closest to when they were 100% healthy, which they still weren't, they were still 80%, but in that game, they were great against Cincinnati, and they protected Wentz, and they ran the ball and everything, and this line was supposed to be good. And I think that it would have been. It's just sometimes you cannot control 2 concussions for the center, coming back from an ACL for Darasaw. I think Will Fries, we have to give him some credit for coming back from a major injury as well, that he did practice. So we thought, well, he should be fine, but I don't think he's been quite as explosive as I expected him to be based on what he had done for the Indianapolis Colts. So it's been a rough ride for both of these teams up front. Mr. Mayor, should we be concerned with J.J. McCarthy not practicing? Feel like I've seen a lot of quarterbacks play through high ankle sprains in real games. I don't want him to do that, but surely the practice field is okay. Yeah, that's, hard for me to say. When he was first injured, I had asked some people who have not evaluated him about this type of injury, and the feedback that I got back was, well, if he finished the game, then it shouldn't be too bad. But at the same time, O'Connell has said before that he doesn't want him to be out there until he is 100%. And the opportunity is there with the bye week to allow him to get back to 100%. And so not trying to push him out there at all before this thing is ready to go. I'm a little surprised that he's not back out there practicing, but if they don't want him doing anything in real practice that could set him back at all, so even if he's 94%, they're saying we're going to wait till tomorrow because you're not playing this week. So you're not going to play potentially until you get back and play the Philadelphia Eagles. So you might as well not push it if even there's a little bit of ouchie. I mean, if he groans standing up, you're like, you're not practicing today, kid, because there's no reason to push it. I did think that he would be practicing by today, but O'Connell did suggest maybe Thursday, Friday that he could get back practicing, and we'll see if that's it. I don't know how much he's going to do because Brosmer will likely be the active backup quarterback. I'm guessing would be the active backup quarterback, and he would likely be running the scout team for this week if it's Brosmer. So there might be some limitations on what McCarthy could do, but you're right. You'd like to see him getting back on the practice field and at least, making progress here. But there's going to be, if you look at the calendar between games of when they play Sunday morning and then the next time they play, it's a long time. I don't have the calendar app up right now, but it's a long time for him to heal back to 100%. Trona guy says high ankle sprains take a long time to fully heal. I think that's the point, right? It's the fully heal is the big part of it. KFT says KOC needs to lean on quick passing game and mix in deeper routes, but less than his normal game plan. And that's the test. That's the test. I think we all see it and we all know that is what they need to do. But has it been consistently something they've done at any point with KOC? And this is why I've made in the past a comparison with him and Bruce Arians, like the no risk it, no biscuit. This is not like, think about the opposite end of that is the way that Alex Smith played for Kansas City. Alex Smith won a ton of games with Kansas City and San Francisco by never risking anything. He never turned the ball over. He took some sacks, but it wasn't that bad. But he would take those sacks where it's like, could I risk this pass or take a sack? I'll take a sack on third down. He wouldn't push it into traffic. Football Outsiders once upon a time named a stat for throwing short of the sticks after Alex Smith. They did it so often, and they won a lot because they played a possession game. They won the turnover battle almost every game. You look at the Chiefs turnover plus minus during Alex Smith's time, and they won a lot that way. That's one extreme that you can play. You can do that and try to win games that way. The other extreme is that you are always playing aggressively, and you can win that way as well. But you need to hit the right side of variance. And when you get sacked 6 times, you're not going to hit the right side of variance, and you throw 2 interceptions. That's really been what's gotten them this year. They got sacked. How many times McCarthy gets sacked? Was it 6 in the game against Atlanta? And then you have 2 interceptions, right? 2 interceptions, 2, and then fumbles like that. You're not going to win that way. If you have, I think I added this up with McCarthy's game against Atlanta. He dropped back like 27 times and 10 or 11 of the plays were either a sack, a fumble, or an interception. I mean, that's just, you're not going to win that way at the quarterback position, no matter what you're doing. So they do need to have Wentz kind of protected from himself and try to get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. But you get a 3 and out, and then the other team moves the ball, and then you get antsy, and then you want to hit an explosive. And we've kind of seen that play out before with this team. Demad says, too many injuries. What the heck is going on? Well, I think that there's some of this where you could say, hey, you knew Ryan Kelly's history. You knew what had happened in the past, and you still signed him. Even if it wasn't for a lot of money, you still didn't bring in a backup center who was a veteran. Not that there's a million great backup centers out there, but you also cut Garrett Bradbury, who is a starting center in the league, and maybe you didn't want to pay his money, and that's fine. It makes sense, but he's a starting caliber player that you could have had Ryan Kelly. Like, he was under contract. So you could have had Ryan Kelly, and then Bradbury is the backup, and then Bradbury would be playing now. And as much as he's not an elite starter, he could still play in the league, right? And you can, I think, pin some of that on the way that situation was handled. I personally was not that concerned about it because they had liked what they had seen from Jurgens. And if you add up, go through the PFF grades and pressures and everything from backup centers around the NFL, it's just, who was it that you were going to get that was going to be this awesome backup center unless they had kept Bradbury on the roster? I understand why they didn't. That would be a lot to pay for a backup center, and they needed to allocate that elsewhere. But still, like, I get some of that stuff. But really, a lot of it is just total randomness. I think that you have to separate it into some categories of like which ones do you criticize, which ones not. Ryan Kelly still played 800 something snaps last year, even getting banged up at times. He still played a lot over the last 3 years. This is a bad break for him. Aaron Jones, that's one where I think you could look at that contract and say, that's kind of a lot of money to give Aaron Jones when this risk was there. I think that they viewed him as very valuable to winning. And I think that they felt like they had a good plan for him physically, but the risk was there. And so some of these were, hey, you knew that that could be the case. And some of these, total, complete, random bad luck. Donovan Jackson, never injured in college, as far as I know. He is playing great. He's a young guy. It's a first-round draft pick. And something happens to his wrist, and he's out. I don't know. What are you supposed to do there? Brian O'Neill, who's been injured a few times through the years, but has mostly been an Iron Man for them, and he gets hurt on a field goal. That's total bad luck. That is just, hey, the world is out to get you this year when that happens. And other guys are even playing banged up as well. Like I think Josh Oliver's been playing pretty banged up. CJ Ham is never injured, and he's missing parts of the season. Cashman is a fairly young player. He's had some injuries in the past, but he was healthy most of last year. He's chasing down Caleb Williams, the hamstring pulls. I don't know. Van Ginkel had an injury history, but that was with a foot. And then he gets a neck injury in camp. Again, these things, you can't really control them. You could say, well, some of these guys are older, but there's also a lot of older guys in the NFL who know how to take care of their bodies and they're playing. I mean, Harrison Smith getting the health issue and then having to be out for a couple of games, and he only played 17 snaps in the last game, so he's not back up to 100%. That another just totally random thing. Sometimes you get super lucky and you keep everybody on the roster the entire time, and other times the football gods are not on your side. So that's how it goes. Reminder, just as we're having the conversation, the FanDuel question of the day, if you just popped in, the over-under actually went down today from 36.5 to 35.5 when Dillon Gabriel was announced as the starting quarterback for the Browns. This is the point total between the Browns and the Vikings. How many points do the Vikings need to win this game? The consensus has been somewhere between 17 and 21. Little Bit 54 says 21. I think that's perfectly fair. Trona guy says Brandel's not very good as a center, hopefully, or a guard. Hopefully he'll be better as a center. No, I mean, Blake Brandel is your typical backup offensive lineman, where if you get a handful of games, he can play and he'll be okay. It's not going to help you. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to be, wow, this guy was the answer all along, but you can play your game. And you don't have your season end because he goes out there. There's much, much worse linemen in the league than Blake Brandel. I think right now he'd be starting for probably 5 or 6 teams, if not more than that, based on what he did last year. Because we've seen some truly horrific offensive line play. Look at the Raiders. There's a guy for Seattle that someone made a video clip of, and it kind of looked like Drew Samia or Dakota Dozier, or those where you're going, what in the world is happening here? Like, that's what happens. There are linemen that are so bad that you can't figure out how they're even playing. That's not Brandel. Brandel can play. So he's not a great guard, but he's also not a terrible guard. I think he's one of the better. I mean, if you're talking backups, he's probably elite for a backup guard. Center might be a tough task. Snapping the ball, he's never done it before. You're going to have Wentz do all the reads there. That's the thing. If they can't get healthier at the offensive line position, it's not going to be an easy transition back into playing quarterback for JJ McCarthy. Chris says, what are your thoughts on how KOC has talked about McCarthy? It feels different than in the past. In the past, he was way more excited and confident. Now, not so much. Yeah, so last week when I brought this up, it's a great question, Chris. When I brought this up last week, it was not received well, but I felt the same way. With the way that the questions have been answered by Kevin O'Connell since JJ McCarthy got hurt and since the game against Atlanta, they had a very different tone. And the quote that I have to keep going back to is when he was asked if McCarthy is QB1 when he gets healthy. And he said something about, luckily, I don't have to answer that question right now. And I was like, really? Because after joint practices, you couldn't wipe the smile off of Kevin O'Connell's face. He was so happy with J.J. McCarthy. And then you go to the locker room following the game against Chicago. And yeah, it was as ugly as it was in the first half, but they play 4 quarters for a reason. And that wasn't fake. That happened. He was clutch. He made great throws. He ran. I thought the JT O'Sullivan breakdown told a pretty clear story about that first game where it was a lot of mistakes. It wasn't just McCarthy, and it was against Atlanta as well. But the tone has definitely been a little bit different. The tone has not screamed at any point, guys, I cannot wait to get our starting quarterback back. Like, Carson is our backup and he's doing a great job, but man, we need JJ back and I can't wait. There hasn't been that tone. And O'Connell can be a little tricky to read sometimes because there's a lot of words. Like, he loves to give you a complete and full answer that covers every part of the question and sometimes meanders off into other areas that you maybe weren't asking about. Like, that happens with O'Connell. But there hasn't been a directness to this. And just in general, as I've done this for how many years, I've always thought that the more direct the answer, the more true it was likely to be. So with Mike Zimmer, if you asked Mike Zimmer, didn't you want to get a look at Kellen Mond? And he says, I see him in practice every day. Well, that's the truth, right? And we got a lot of truth from Mike Zimmer at the podium because he was a very direct person. And we would know where somebody stood. If he wasn't happy with Anthony Barr's effort, he was just going to say something like he has a tendency to coast, which was not something he should have said, of course, but that is Mike Zimmer. And O'Connell has a little bit of a different way of doing this, but if it's very direct, if you ask him after the first game, I think I asked him about Javon, oh no, I froze. Oh no. Oh, am I back? Am I back? Oh. Come on, OBS. Hold on. Is it back? Are we back? Okay. It says reconnected, so hopefully we're okay. Sorry about that. I'm looking down at myself here. I think we're all right. Just had a little bit of a glitch. Okay, it's back. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. It was not the dog. It was not the dog's fault this time. But it seems like we're good. So sorry about that. I don't know. But technology, I guess. Anyway, so the point just being that what you were saying, Chris, maybe that was Kevin O'Connell sneaking in to in his connected people trying to pull the cord on how indirect he's been about the McCarthy answers. But it really have felt like he's left the door potentially open to sticking with Carson Wentz this entire time. And I think they went past go with that after the loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You lose to the Steelers, it's very hard to convince me that it's going to be Carson Wentz the rest of the way who takes you to the playoffs, and it's going to be one of those years and everything's going to be great and whatever, right? It's a 14-win season again, or it's Case Keenum, or like after that loss, I think that air went out of that balloon. Like, that doesn't seem all that possible. So that's why you have to go back to JJ McCarthy. But there has never been a direct, yes, we are going back to JJ McCarthy when he is healthy. And that raises an eyebrow. It doesn't resolve everything, but it certainly raises an eyebrow for me. So, Chris, I think that's a good observation. And Chris followed up with, it's not the normal way you talk about QB1. And I agree. I mean, if this was Kirk Cousins and Nick Mullins, then you would have been saying, yeah, well, Nick's doing a great job as our backup. And when Kirk comes back, like, there wouldn't even be really a question, but it is, and it was not answered directly. So Damad says, I think KOC is upset with McCarthy, not as positive as before. It's a hard read. O'Connell can be a hard read sometimes about how he really feels about stuff because he is so good at talking that he doesn't really show his cards as much as someone like Mike Zimmer, who would just tell you. If he was mad at McCarthy, he'd be like, yeah, he's got to play better. He stinks. I'm mad at him. It'd be that simple. But it's not with Kevin O'Connell. So trying to understand how he feels about this scenario with Wentz and McCarthy has been a little bit difficult. And I know a lot of people have not wanted to hear that, but the proof is just in how he's answered those questions, that you do wonder if Wentz puts up 30 points and wins this game, is he going to start against Philadelphia and start against the Chargers after that? Or is the plan to just go back to McCarthy? I think maybe the Chargers game, if they don't want him to start 2 games in a row on a short week, I understand. But also, it's the NFL. I mean, you're going to have a tough schedule sometimes. You're going to have injuries sometimes. You can't just protect someone for the entire season, or you'll never find the right time to do it. It's kind of like when you become an adult and you're trying to schedule things with your friends, and you just get so busy and there's a lot going on, and you're like, there's never a perfect time. You just got to figure out how you're going to do it, right? And the same thing goes for this. But your guys' read on that was kind of similar to mine, that it's not, hey, he hates this quarterback, but it's not the same tone as it was even after week 1 was not perfect by any means. Let's see. C. Bakes says, insanely depressing for all the discourse we had in the offseason of a revamped offensive line. Only 4 weeks we're talking about Jurgens, Brandel, Huber, and School getting significant time. I know. And that is the challenge of the offseason, right? Because all offseason, what I said was, I don't want to talk about injuries. And we would get that comment and that question, hey, aren't you worried about injuries? And I would say, how can I know? Last year, I was worried about Aaron Jones and injuries, and he played 17 games. So I don't know. Like, we can never predict this stuff. But is it majorly disappointing to not be able to see it? I think the biggest part is that I think it would be really good. And I think it would make a huge difference. I think that a Darasaw, Jackson, Kelly, Fries, O'Neal offensive line would be one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And I don't know if you're ever going to see it, which is very unfortunate. And that's where, when I see people, well, they made this mistake, they made that mistake. And I get it, because you get to 2-2. It's not where you're supposed to be. The offense hasn't looked anywhere close. But I also think, gosh, who would have predicted that they would be out all of these guys? Jackson being as young as he is, O'Neal having a very positive health record for his career. I mean, how would you ever guess that you would be without this many players on offense? A couple, I think, of injuries would be expected, but not like this. Trona guy says 3-2 isn't bad considering the injuries and penalties. The penalties I think it's connected to that, though. Like, a lot of the penalties have just been false starts, delay of game. What do we got? 2 delay of games. And I mean, how many false starts? Maybe 4 or 5. It's clear Darasaw is just not 100% back into that. He's had a couple of penalties. That can't happen if you're going to play against the Browns team with this kind of defense. And they need to do better there. But that's what happens when you're messed up front, is you end up with these penalties. Some of them have been kind of ridiculous. 2 15-yard penalties, and neither one was deserving against Pittsburgh. There was the flop, and then there was the retaliation. And even though I know you can't retaliate by smacking somebody in the face, he was getting his face mask dragged first. And, I don't know. It's like bad luck on that. But they've been one of the most penalized teams in the league. So is that bad luck, or is that something that they're going to do all year? Like, we don't really know, because they've gone up and down under O'Connell. Sometimes they've been wildly penalized, and sometimes they have not, from year to year, and you just never really know. But I think there is a pretty clear explanation when you're playing with a bunch of guys that haven't played together on the offensive line and a backup center, that some of those procedural penalties is what you're going to end up with at times. But 3-2, yeah, to your main point, 3-2 would be like, how we were talking about ties earlier, where... And I don't know where this came from. Whoever the first freak who said it's like kissing your sister, I need an explanation. Like I get what you're saying, but that's also a very weird thought to have. So anyway, but being 3-2 would feel like a tie where you go, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's definitely not the best thing I've ever seen. It's not where you expect it to be considering who you were playing. And it's coming out of it with all the injuries and uncertainty about McCarthy and all those things. How it's looked matters. Having to beat Cleveland to get to 3-2, having looked so inept on offense for most of the season outside of Cincinnati, outside of when you're losing to Pittsburgh. But other than that, outside of one quarter in Chicago, there's so much poor play offensively, and knowing that feels a lot worse. If it was 3-2 and the offense had been functional or good and McCarthy was healthy the entire time, and you were saying, well, the kid took his licks, but here you go, second half of the season, turn that corner, kid, it's time. If you had told me it played out that way, that McCarthy had played well and had a couple stinkers, and then that's how you get to 3-2, I would have said, okay, that's a good outcome. That's fine. All right. But quarterback uncertainty, quarterback injury sets him back again for his development, because now it feels like if he comes back against Philly, he's making his debut all over again because he's been out. And now the whole timing and the rhythm and all those things we're talking about, you're not getting the reps to be able to do that. And then who knows where you're going to be with Ryan Kelly. If he's going to come back, he shouldn't, but if he does, then Donovan Jackson, when is he going to return? O'Neal, when is he going to return? What's it going to look like? With so many questions going into the second half of the season, it feels very meh. It feels very, it doesn't feel like, hey, 3-2, like we're on our way. It doesn't feel that way. One of the answers to the FanDuel question of the day was, how many points would the Vikings need to beat the Cleveland Browns? One of the answers was 1. So I don't think you could get 1. So I guess the answer would be 2 for you. 2 points. If they get 2, then they'll win. Mr. Mayor's answer is 16, which means you're taking the under. Rob's got 10 points being enough. I think 10 might be a little low. I think they could get 10, like maybe a pick 6 or a Myles Garrett strip sack, return for a touchdown, a field goal, 3 field goals to get him to 9. So maybe you need 10. Or it could be 30-28 because we all know nothing about football. George says, has anyone told KOC he doesn't have Stafford or even Kirk at quarterback? They both could stand in and fire and take the beating when the line fell apart. Yeah, I know. I felt the same way, George. When I was watching that tape back, there were times where I felt the same way. Like, do you know that you don't have Matthew Stafford at quarterback? Because if Matthew Stafford was the quarterback last week, the Vikings win by 30 points. There were enough open wide receivers. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but they would. There's a lot of mistakes there that got made and sacks and things like that Matt Stafford would not have allowed to happen. And there's some plays that go wrong where I think Stafford just throws it into the dirt, and he doesn't take the many sacks that he used to take when he was younger and was trying to make plays. But the number of times where he would have thrown with anticipation, seeing guys breaking open, but you're right, like you just don't have that. And that's been the disconnect with backup quarterbacks, whether it's Nick Mullins or Carson Wentz or Josh Dobbs. The disconnect has been the offense, the plays are there, but the quarterback can't make them work. And even JJ McCarthy, if the quarterback can't make them work, then I don't think it's a good play. It's not a good play if the guy is wide open, but the quarterback is incapable of finding him. And that's what's been, I think, really challenging for KOC, is how do you pare it down? And sometimes there is no answer. Cincinnati with Jake Browning right now, like there's just no answer. They can't block anyone. They can't do anything. There's nothing their coach can do about that. But I think there were some answers there against Pittsburgh, and they found them on a lot of plays and just did not finish drives, and then let the game get away from them a little bit. And that's how they got down 24-6. K-Fow says, didn't Jeremiah mention stunts and twists as a problem? Oh, stunts and twists are a huge problem. And that's what happened last year. I mean, that's the main reason. The Rams having freakish, unbelievable players is the main reason. But blitzes, stunts, and twists, when you have backup offensive linemen in there, are a nightmare because that's what takes a lot of communication. And when I was watching Ryan Kelly sort his way through stunts and twists, it was something to see. I mean, it was magical at times. There's a touchdown that McCarthy threw to Aaron Jones where they run a really nice stunt and Ryan Kelly sees it the whole way, doesn't drift, braces for it, and just sticks the guy in place and slams him into the ground. It was like, ooh, that's some offensive line play, my friends. When Ryan Kelly's in there, he's usually really terrific. And he's great at that, but he's not in there. And now you're trying to figure all that stuff out between a bunch of backup guys. Those take not just communication, but almost a understanding, like an interconnectedness of an understanding of how to play those things where you're not, because in the NFL, if you're one step too far to one side and you leave too much space for one of these guys, you're giving up a pressure. Like it really has to be precise. How is it going to be precise if it's Blake Brandel at center and Joe Huber at left guard? And if, we'll see about Jurgens, but how is it going to be precise if that happens? Those reps, that's the thing. You need them. Neil says 7. What is this? A 2-0 shutout. Chris was 17. Rob says he feel comfortable with 21 or 24. Damad's got 10. Antoine thinks they need 30 to win the game. Well, that means you're the person on the one side of the shoulder that is assuming that any new or young quarterback is going to end up with having a big day against the Vikings. It is a myth, by the way, that backup quarterbacks beat the Vikings more than anybody else. It's a myth. I've gone now. You remember them when it's happened, so you feel like it happens to us all the time. It's kind of like what's the thing with everybody thinks that they're an above average driver, more, but there's like if you said where would you rank percentile wise, most people would say, well, I'm above average driver, but most people can't be an above average driver. It doesn't match up. It's sort of like that with backup quarterbacks. Like every team thinks, man, we always lose to those backup quarterbacks. But I looked at this one time. It's not any more than usual. It's about 1 in 4 games that the Vikings play against the backups that they lose. And that's about how much backups win. I think there's a winning percentage for backups. I did this maybe 2 or 3 years ago, is about 30% win percentage when a team starts a backup quarterback. Which is why, if you win 2 out of 3 with Carson Wentz, you'll feel pretty good about it, I guess. But that's usually what happens when you're playing backups. But that means that 1 out of every 3 or 4 times you get a Matt Moore game and you lose to a backup quarterback. So it does happen. But I can see why the very memorable losses to backup quarterbacks would still sit in everybody's mind. Mr. Mayor, it would be hilarious if CJ Ham turns out to actually be the secret ingredient to KOC's offense. Hey, look, a lot of the sacks are coming on third down. 10 of the 18 sacks have come on third down. And this is where CJ Ham is going to play because, you might use Xavier Scott out there a little bit to catch the ball on third down. You might put him in the slot. They did it last week. They actually used him in the slot, I think, on 7 or 8 plays. And I was surprised by that, but he's being used as kind of a hybrid wide receiver. I remember someone asked, like, how much will they use him as a receiver in the offseason? And my thought was, well, he's really a running back who can catch the ball. There's a reason he switched positions, but he was a true hybrid in that game and made a great toe tap. I mean, that's not a toe tap you see from a running back normally. That was a great toe tap catch in the back of the end zone. Also, when you watch that play, so he actually beats Jalen Ramsey on that play because Jalen Ramsey is in what a moment for that guy's life, right? Beating one of the best corners ever for a touchdown. But what happened was Jalen Ramsey saw that it was a running back and he settled into his zone and never thought the guy would go vertical. So there's a little bit of an edge there, but being able to block on third down is the key here. Third down passing situations. And CJ Ham could be a key. I don't think he'll unlock the entire thing, but they also could use him in the run game. With the backup offensive lineman, it could be helpful to line up in the I formation and just play a little bit of old school here. David says this defense needs to play the run more schematically and expose their secondary to being better, especially with all the money and the investment on the defensive backfield, including the safety spots. So the run defense during the game, I had the same feeling as you guys, which was, I can't believe how bad this is. The fact that Kenneth Gainwell is cruising over you. And then when I watched it back, what I realized was it was just a great job by Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh realized, and this is an offensive coordinator who won a lot of games with Ryan Tannehill playing exactly this way with Derrick Henry. Now, that's not Kenneth Gainwell, but what they did was they put 6 linemen out there and they just created a ton of size mismatches where you had Ivan Pace out there and they've got 6 linemen and you've got, Harrison Smith or Theo Jackson or whoever, and they were just overloading one side. They hand off to that side. They've got a tight end. They've got 2 tackles out there, and they're just creating a wall. And that's what they did. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that more often, and wouldn't be surprised to see Kevin Stefanski do it either, is just create this wall of humanity. Although, do they have 6 linemen? And try to run behind it with Quinyon Judkins, who is going to be, I think, the scariest player that the Vikings are going to face on their offense. It is a concern. I don't know that Harrison Phillips would have resolved all these problems, or Jonathan Bullard. I think a big part of this is that Blake Cashman and Andrew Van Ginkel are great at rallying to tackle, and they didn't have those guys. So that made a big difference. They're very instinctual, very smart players. They're great at the actual tackle. The Vikings missed a lot of them. So I think they just not having those guys hurt them a lot, but it also was a defense that's built to pressure the quarterback more, cause turnovers, cause sacks. And when you're playing from down 24-6 or even 14-6, it just changes the game where Pittsburgh can say, we're going to throw in 6 linemen. We're going to run every play. We're going to throw 2-yard passes, and we're just going to wear you down and make you deal with it. And that's what they did. It was a great job by them. Let's see. LT Rangers has watched another podcast breaking down film, was shocked to see how many open receivers Wentz didn't see at times, staring down the first option, not progressing to the shorter check down, to reads against the blitz, to slow down the blitz. No, I totally agree. And there were moments with Carson Wentz, as you're talking about, where he should have just pulled the trigger and didn't, on plays that were there. And that's where the seeing ghosts things happen, but that's where getting hit impacts your ability to play. I mean, the first drive, he has Justin Jefferson and Jordan Mason wide open, and he takes a sack. And it set the tone because he also got destroyed on the play. And it set the tone a little bit for the game where you just felt like he wasn't seeing it. And then you see some frustration from receivers. And this would happen with Darnold a couple of times. It happened with Kirk a few times, where, not more than a few times, we saw a lot of games like this with Kirk Cousins, where he just wasn't functioning the way that he needed to function, in part because he was getting hit. And they never had a good offensive line in front of Kirk the entire time he was here, maybe 2023, and then he gets hurt. They never had a good offensive line, and there would be games where he would get sped up and then come off of the reads. And it all plays into each other, where you take that first hit and you miss somebody open, and then it builds on that and builds on that. But you're right. Like, there were guys very much open down the field. There was a 3rd down play where Jalen Nailor's coming out of a break. Nailor's been the best player who can't get the football. He has been open a number of times. There was one where maybe he's open for a touchdown, but this one, it was a 3rd down. He's coming out of his break, and Wentz actually pulls up to throw it and then just didn't. And I have no idea why, because it would have been the ideal throw a guy coming out of a break into a 1st down past the sticks, and then he just takes a sack. So there were times in that game where he just didn't see what he needed to see in order to have success in that game, because the opportunities were there. And I'm sure as KOC was watching it back, that was his frustration. Like, the opportunities were there. Dennis says, what do you suppose Dillon will do to handle Flores' defense? I think that they'll try to slog it up. That's what they'll try to do. Like, what happened last week was an offense just creating a big old slog, which is, hey, there's 6 yards, there's 5 yards, there's 7 yards, and then, hey, someone broke a big play on a slant. That's what they're going to try to do with Dillon Gabriel. It's going to be, hey, Njoku, there's 7 yards. Fannin, there's 7 yards. Here's Judkins, 5 yards. And you just, and look, field goal position is now the 40-yard line And if they can get some field position, kick some field goals, it's possible that they can score some points. But I think that that's what Kevin Stefanski is not afraid to do. And we saw him do that when he was the Vikings offensive coordinator. In 2019, he was not afraid. I don't know. Maybe I just invented a term of slog it up, but he wasn't afraid to create that slow progressing type of offense that has a couple of 3-and-outs, hammering away at the defense. And eventually it starts to kind of chip away if your defense is playing well. I think that's what he's going to want to do. And then at the same time, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if they just try to take a couple of deep shots to Jerry Jeudy to see if they could hit a home run. KFT says, is Huber the backup to Jurgens? It sounded like from what Kevin Seifert was saying that it was going to be Brandel. Brandel would make more sense. KFT, is Felton a disappointment because he hasn't gotten on the field? He was really talked up in the offseason. No, well, I mean, I guess he was talked up after the draft, but during training camp, I probably got 50 questions about why isn't Ty Felton getting more snaps and all that sort of stuff. But when you look at the receiver room right now, and I would like to see him get the ball in his hands once or twice as a rotational player, but if you look at the receiver room at the moment with 2 star players, and then Naylor has done well for them in the past, and Adam Thielen's wide receiver 4, it's like, where are you going to exactly fit Felton in? I love what Felton has done on special teams, and I think that he's developing. But it was clear during the offseason he was a guy that was going to need work. And that's okay. I talk about this all the time of it's okay if a player develops. And when I watch different games around the league, and like Quentin Johnston, who was just written off as the biggest piece of garbage ever, and then like now he's good. I don't know. I mean, sometimes players develop, and he was a higher draft pick, but it's okay if somebody needs a year to play on special teams, get some work getting off the line of scrimmage, making tackles, contributing to the team in some way, returning. And then next year, when Jalen Naylor leaves in free agency, then you elevate Ty Felton into that role. But I would like to see him used a couple times on little trick plays or something. Not trick plays, but a little screen or a little end around or something like that, or reverse, just to get the ball in his hands a little bit more, because he does have great speed. Taylor says that the season is teetering on the edge of darkness. Wow. That's deep. That's very metal. That's a Megadeth song. The season is teetering on the edge of darkness by Megadeth. Dave Mustaine says a loss to the Browns would be the end of playoff possibilities, a must win in week 5. That second part, I agree. That first part, I'm stealing for my metal album. But I totally agree. Is if you win this game and you go to 3-2, then everything is still on the table except for a 13-win season. Like that's off. That's not going to happen. If you're 3-2 coming out of this run, and then you got the teams coming up, winning 13 is probably off the table. Winning 11 is possible. If we were doing a pie chart, for example, of possibilities if they win, then I would say winning 12 or more is probably about a 5% chance. Winning between 9 and 11 games is maybe a 35% chance, or maybe even higher than that, maybe even 45% chance. Let's go 35. And then winning between 7 and maybe 6 and 8 games becomes, let's see, if I did 45, 50, then you've probably got like another 40% and then a 10% chance that you're winning less than 5. That would be completely shocking. But if you're 3-2, that means that the most reasonable possibilities still exist between winning 7 and 11 games, which means being in the hunt at the end and having a chance to still make the playoffs, and then whatever happens. If you lose this one, I mean, a 5-win season still seems almost impossible, but 6, 7, then the pie chart skyrockets in the area of 6 to 8 wins, skyrockets that possibility. I would put it at like 75% if they lose this one, that they win between 6 and 8 games the entire year. And that's not what you signed up for. So it does feel like that. It does feel like teetering. I need John Facenda to read that sound, or Manny. The season was teetering on the edge of darkness, and only one man could save them. Joe Huber is the left guard. That's good. That's good, Taylor. That's good stuff. We're having a good chat tonight, guys. I feel like you've been very reasonable. I think we all needed a little bit of a deep breath after last week to have this conversation. You know, I wasn't live last night because I got hit by a car. Not my body, but my car got hit by another car. I was in a roundabout. I was going to Target. And what people don't understand about roundabouts is that pedestrians cross these roundabouts and you have to stop because you can't kill them. So I stopped for a pedestrian and the person behind me did not anticipate that at all. And at least the thing about roundabouts is that you get hit at a very slow pace, but it still tore up the back of the old Honda Civic. So we're going to have to see how that works. But was dealing with that last night. Wasn't able to go live, but we're having a good chat tonight. I'm glad for that. But I'm fine. It was like if you've ever gone to the carnival and you play bumper cars. It was just a little bit of like, oh, I just got hit by somebody. So those things happen. That's why they have roundabouts, because if people just ran four-way stops, then you get hit faster, I guess. KFT randomly says Greg Pruitt in the tearaway jersey. Yeah, I mean, look, the Browns history. I can't wait. Manny tomorrow night is going to name his favorite Browns of all time. That should be a great list. It really should. Taylor says, I'm surprised KOC hasn't just said to take the pressure off the quarterback, we're going to a run heavy each game and every game. You can't do. That's the problem, is that it's hard to do that when you get behind. It's hard to just go 6 linemen and Josh Oliver out there and play like Army if you're down. And even down 14-6 coming out in the second half still feels like a lot of pressure there. And when Pittsburgh was having long drives and holding on to the ball, it just sort of shows you how different last year was when they got ahead early, and how important that is to how the entire game works out, is trying to get ahead early. KFT says Felton has to get stronger to be a factor. Yeah, I agree with that. I think technique is going to be a thing too. And just, opportunity. Look, if he was playing wide receiver right now, if they didn't have Jordan Addison, if they didn't have Jalen Naylor, I think he'd be catching balls. From what I saw in camp, I did not see a player, and look, I've seen some over the years. I did not see a player who was lost or somebody who had no potential. I just saw a guy who needs development. The getting off the line of scrimmage is something you could see he can do on those punt gunning things. I would say that in and out of the breaks, route details, yardages, being at the right spot, he's got good hands, but it's not flawless. I think that can improve, but we just give him time. Give him time to be ready for next year. I'd just like to see him get the ball a little bit, or Myles Price. We talked so much about how Myles Price is great with the ball in his hands, but I don't think they've tried to get it to him at all. I would like to see them try to use Myles Price at least a little bit, at least on 2 plays in a game, or Ty Felton on 2 plays in a game, just to try something. Even the play that they ran to Jefferson, that was the little screen. I mean, you could do that to somebody who's really good with the ball in their hands, and that's okay. I like it for Jefferson as well. Chris says all efforts should be to get McCarthy to play. They have to know if he's the guy or not. I mean, I agree. If last week had gone way differently, then I would have been on the side of you're trying to win. And if you're 4-1, then you're a winning team. And if they had been 4-1, they would be ahead of the Packers right now and feel like you're right in this race. And go race with Carson Wentz and see where it takes you, because you're supposed to win. But that took it out of it for me. That took that scenario out of it for me, where you could see that the weaknesses are just too weak with Carson Wentz. And I give Wentz a ton of credit as a backup quarterback who could come in and win. And what he did against Cincinnati, played well, and he gave them a chance last week, and that's as good as you can hope for. You go into this game against Cleveland feeling like, yeah, Carson Wentz can win you a game. It's a great feeling with a backup. I never felt that way with Mullins. I definitely wouldn't have felt that way if it was Sam Howell. But that's just where he is in his career. That's where he's been. If he was a starter, he would have been a starter somewhere else. So if we sort of know what this is going to be with him, which is probably 1 week up, next week down, 500 type record, then it's just far better not only to find out what they have in McCarthy, but McCarthy's potential is just so much higher. His playmaking, his scrambling, his running is just so much higher. Randomly, Taylor says Sam Bradford was bad. I don't agree with that. I think Sam Bradford was good. But Bradford was evidence of how much supporting cast can impact the player. 2017, I have no doubt Sam Bradford's taken them very, very deep in the playoffs and probably wouldn't have needed a miracle to do it. And in 16, he was really good in a lot of games, but once they couldn't block for him, it was over. And once they couldn't run, it was over. You have to be able to, 99% of quarterbacks, you have to be able to support him. And even Josh Allen has a really good offensive line. Like that never gets mentioned. RJ says they hardly use slants. I don't know why. You know, this thing, True Media, that I just got my hands on. I'm just figuring out how to use it with all the data. It really demonstrates what you're saying is that this is a vertical passing offense, and that all connects to the sacks and things like that. It's a vertical passing offense. When you look at the routes, you got Hockenson will go underneath in the middle of the field sometimes, but you don't see many slants. I don't think that that's something that Kevin O'Connell really loves for his quarterbacks. But it's a lot of downfield. It's a lot of double moves, clearing out space, and then, putting on the brakes, deep in routes you'll see all the time, but not too many of what DK Metcalf did last week, where you're just lining up and then boom, hit the slant. There's the ball in someone's hands. You're not seeing that much from him really ever. And I think it just strains the quarterback where it's very easy and direct for you when it's working. If you're a quarterback, which is why they call it quarterback friendly, because I think when it's working, those reads are there and those receivers are there, and all you got to do is just put it out there. And that guy you saw it from Jefferson, 4 times in that game where you just drop back and he's just there over the middle of the field on a post and just pitch and catch. That happens a lot with this offense, but it also happens a lot that if the defense has the right coverage or fools you a little bit, there's not a lot of easy button stuff. And that's where I think they have to be much better is, okay, mix that in, at least feel like you've got that button there to push. And there's times where they've done that. I mean, there was when Hockenson first got to Minnesota, I thought Kirk used him amazingly when he first got here over the middle of the field. We haven't seen anybody really do that since. And thinking of a game last year, I guess it would have been Sam Darnold against Chicago, where Darnold was inaccurate downfield. Pretty sure he had a hand injury that they just never said anything about because suddenly a piece of tape showed up on his thumb and he wasn't throwing very accurately downfield. And he actually kind of made an adjustment in that game and completed a bunch of underneath passes to keep the train on the tracks. So it's not that they can never do it. It's just that it's not their preference to run a bunch of slants and a bunch of under routes. They do use the mesh concept from time to time, but you just don't see it all the time from them. I don't know. I think that's just the offensive design. It's who they are. The Hangs says, any chance Max starts for the Vikings? I wouldn't count it out that Max Brosmer could get into some games. I think Brosmer's another guy that I'd really like to see develop more before he plays. I like Max Brosmer a ton. I think that, when we were talking about Shaduer Sanders, QB3, give me Max Brosmer over Shaduer Sanders 1,000 times out of 1,000. Just handles himself incredibly, incredibly well. He is the most grown-up rookie I can remember, where the guy comes in, and, I'll give this to Donovan too. Donovan's been really good about this, but just comes in and he's a pro right away. Just acted like he had been a pro for a really long time. And I was just so impressed with his demeanor, his work ethic, how he gets it. There's only a few times that he's talked to media because the third string quarterback usually is not doing things in front of the media a lot. But the way he handled all of that, like all about the team kind of thing, I've just been so impressed with him. And I think he's going to play in the NFL. I think that it might be a little soon for him to play right now. But if he gets in, I won't be thinking if he gets in, oh no, he's in trouble. But you'd like to see him have this whole year and then come in next year as QB2. And you feel really good about Max Brosmer as QB2. I think Max Brosmer will be in this league for 10 years. I think he's going to be in this league for a really long time. Aaron says they won't have to throw. Their running back might have 250 yards rushing. That's what they're going to want. I don't know if they can run block either. Let me look. Let me see what their run blocking has been for the Browns. They're the 6th worst graded run blocking. They can't block anything. If this team can run against the Vikings, it is a massive, massive problem. They should be very, very concerned. Susan says Penix already had a relatively good day against Flores, a lot due to Bijan's game, but due to some effectiveness in the short passing game. I thought that what Penix did against the Vikings was just manage the game. Like, don't make any huge mistake. Don't throw the ball away. He didn't have a good game, but he didn't screw up a lead that if you throw an interception or get strip sacked, you give the game away. He didn't really do a lot or have to in that game, which is what Cleveland, I'm sure, is thinking. I'm sure that Cleveland is going into this game thinking, if we play like Atlanta, where you just run and run and run and run, and then have our quarterback manage the game, complete a handful of passes, then we've got a chance. And they're not wrong. This is where the Vikings have to prove that they can stop the run. And maybe you have to put Jalen Redmond on the field a lot more. Maybe you have to elevate Taki Taimani or something to try to do something to stuff the run. Or you have to put, they don't really have an extra linebacker to put on the field, but something, there's got to be some answer there, but it's not easy when you're missing Cashman and Van Ginkel. VA Viking, what's the turnaround for O'Neal? The expectation for an MCL is usually like, and this is again sort of like, don't quote me on this, but 4 or 5 weeks a lot of times. I mean, I don't know if he'll be back by the Philadelphia game. I wouldn't fully expect that, but it's possible. You know, O'Neal's going to try to push himself back out there. I think it's possible that he's back after the bye, but they've just said week to week. I think MCL is kind of a 4 to 6 week type of thing, but it's still not, you know, for sure. I don't know. Again, like, if we're not given a timeline, then it's hard to guess on one. I'm just going in the past. Like when you hear about this injury, 3, 4, 5 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. That's the best I can do there. Taki Taimani will play center is terrific. That's a great comment. KFT, if Jurgens is out, then who plays center? I think it's going to be Blake Brandel, but I guess it could be Joe Huber. He's done it a little bit in camp, but that didn't go very well. KFT, can Taimani help stop the run? I think he could, yeah. I don't think he just automatically solves all the problems because you really want to have Allen and Hargrave on the field. But if I think they should consider this. They should consider elevating Taimani for this game. Cleveland is not going to sit there and drop back to throw 45 times to win this game with their rookie quarterback. They are winning this game one way and one way only, which is that they control the game with their running game, and Quinshon Judkins, a super talent, and they play great defense, and they get a couple of turnovers, and that's the only way that Cleveland wins this game. So you might have to have a counter for that. You might have to have somebody in there that is a run-stopping specific guy. Susan says McCarthy's first game back is the Chargers game. It'll be the 3rd straight primetime Island game for him. Yeah, you're right about that. That's a lot of pressure to start a career. That's why this whole situation with McCarthy, and when we were talking earlier about like trying to read the room with KOC, and he might just want to be not quotable on the subject. He might just not want to say anything that's going to pressure McCarthy or even pressure himself for a decision of what to do at quarterback and lock himself into something and then later have people throw it at him. I don't know. I don't know what the strategy, you can guarantee that there's a strategy from O'Connell of how he's talking about this, but I can't really figure out exactly what that strategy is. I think it's just keep it ambiguous. Don't lock yourself into anything. Don't pressure him to come back too early. And if you love how Wentz is playing, give yourself the option to keep playing him if you love that. I think that's what O'Connell is doing with his commentary on this. But there has been, in the first 2 games, a very difficult set of circumstances to start your career, which is the Monday Night Football. There's so much pressure on you. You don't exactly get the Spiro Ditas afternoon game that nobody watches outside of in Minnesota. You end up with the whole world watching your debut. That's tough. You get that win, but it's Monday Night Football, so you don't get a full week to prepare, and then you have the kid, and that even muddies the waters even more for a quarterback when it comes to the preparation, and it becomes very difficult. I mean, it was a tough start for him, just from even a pure scheduling situation. It was a tough start. And if he's got to come back and then play Philly and then the Chargers, it's the Super Bowl champs and then it's on 4 days rest. But this is football. I mean, if you want to win and you want to be a great quarterback and a great team, like you have to overcome stuff. But this schedule has been bananas. You just have, and you've got time to prepare for both games though, by the way. With the bye week, you've got time to prepare. KFT says the Vikings 14% sack rate so far, the third worst in the last 30 years. Well, luckily there's a lot of games to go, but it's very concerning. Very concerning. And what I'm doing right now, working on this piece about the sacks, is it's really a little bit of everything. It's the downfield routes we talked about. It's aggressiveness on third down. It's quarterbacks who are at fault and hold the ball. Like the rate in which McCarthy and Wentz are holding on to the football is well beyond anything that they've had a quarterback before. Now, Wentz's average time to throw is faster than Darnold's was last year, but in terms of taking the sacks, like they're the two worst in the NFL at causing their own pressure, which to me is probably an indicator of not knowing where to throw the football. That's something that they need to do. Let's see. VA Viking, I think Brandel has a higher ceiling than what we've seen. He's going to be better the more he plays. He's like 29 years old, I think. So I don't know that Brandel is a guy that has any more of a ceiling. I just think that he is, how old is he? He's 28 and almost 20, going on 29. So he, to me, is a guy that's just, he is what he is, but what he is fine as a backup. And now we've lost all the flags. I did go to Home Depot to get some resolution on the flags behind me falling off. I did. I promise. We're going to work on that. Ever since there was some construction going on down here, there was a mold issue. And so we had to have mold people come in and deal with that. Not too bad. It's taken care of, but they had to move the flags. And ever since they moved the flags, they keep falling off. And so I went to Home Depot. We're resolving the issue. Don't worry. I know that it's like halfway through the last 3 shows, they just fall off, but we're working through it. We're just like the Vikings offensive line. We're just working through these things. Two Dog Dad says, I just want to see a good football game. Can we play 60 minutes of good football in all 3 phases? Two Dog Dad, you are asking for way too much, my friend. It's been a tough watch. I agree with you there. It's been a tough watch. And that's why the feeling is what it is from the fans and from the media. I had a friend text me the other day and say, yeah, man, they're 2-2. Like, why is it acting like the team has fallen into a fiery volcano and been incinerated? The season is far from being over. And I agree with that. But if you've watched every play, it's like, where are you finding the silver linings here? Because this kind of has looked like the 2023 season where, yeah, they can be in games, but are they going to be good enough consistently to really be a contender? That's how it's looked, where offensively it could be just painful. And that's not what we expected to be able to see. We didn't expect pain in watching the offense this year. And there's a lot of explanations for it, but it really is not anything what it looked like it was going to be in camp or what it looked like on paper. And that's how it goes sometimes. I mean, I try the best I can to project during training camp, what's this going to look like? How's this going to work? How they're going to play everyone. And then you get in 3 games in and everybody's hurt and you go, well, all that goes out the window, right? So that's kind of how it happens sometimes. Weavy says O-line coach on the hot seat over KOC. Well, KOC's not on the hot seat. KOC is a coach to me who you want to have for a very, very, very long time. He meets a baseline where, is he perfect? No. Do we nitpick him because that's what we do? Yes. If I didn't critique the head coach and his strategies and his decisions and all those things, what would I be doing for my job? Like, that's what we do here. When you lose, we break down why you lost. And, that's what we do. But sometimes, and this goes for the front office as well, and especially the coach, sometimes it goes to the point of sounding like KOC's like the worst coach in the league. And I mean, after week 1, I asked Robert Mays, the Athletic covers the entire NFL for many years. And I asked him, where would you, in an all coach draft, where would you draft KOC? And he said top 5. And I don't think that changes because of what's going on right now. It's hard to coach when you have a certain way of playing and a certain strategy, and then it's blown up by what happens with your roster. I think adjusting is a big part of being a great coach, and we haven't seen that to the level that you would like to see it when things aren't going well. When things aren't going well, you'd like to see that there's a lever to pull or a button to push, and that's happened pretty rarely with this regime. That doesn't mean that he's like a bad coach or is on the hot seat. It means that that's something that has to be better as they go forward here with uncertainty for how the quarterback's going to play or how healthy they're going to be. Like, you have to grind out a way. You got to find a way. I use the example of Pat Shurmur coming in as the offensive coordinator and just sort of finding a way to get Sam Bradford going midway through that 2016 season, to get the short passing game going, and then in 2017 dealing with Case Keenum and Dalvin Cook. Like, you got to find a way, and at times they haven't when things have gone wrong over the last couple of years. But as I mentioned, you usually win about 30% of your games with backup quarterbacks. I don't know I don't know what the win-loss record is when you have 3 backup offensive linemen. I bet it's not great. So, there should be never any discussion about that. This is a a coach that you stick with a really long time. He's a Tomlin, he's a Shanahan, he's a Lafleur. All these guys have their critiques from their local podcaster, for sure. Look at Matt Lafleur being ripped up and down in Green Bay for the handling at the end of that game. He deserves it, but he's a great coach, and I'd take Matt Lafleur immediately. The offensive line coach, Chris Cooper, I just don't know. I mean, the Vikings are grading as the 13th best pass blocking unit right now, which I think tells you a lot about offensive line play around the league. That it's been tough, but their quarterbacks have been dinged with the most sacks and pressures of anyone in the NFL. So is that more on the design? Is it more on the fact that you just had a super inexperienced quarterback and a guy who's a backup? Like, sometimes it's the easiest way to the answer about what's happening is a straight line. It's the obvious thing. It's McCarthy is new and Carson Wentz is a backup, and that's why you're 2-2 and not 4-0. And you could have been 4-0. But I don't know what offensive line coach can coach Justin School to be great, or can coach Michael Jurgens suddenly to be an awesome center. He's a 7th round draft pick. Like, it's hard to do. I shot you 99. The Lions are about to put up 100 on the Bengals. Those poor Bengals, man. It is really, really tough. Really, really tough to be, I'm sure, a Bengals fan, because it shows you how great Joe Burrow is, because that franchise is totally fallen apart. Let's see. Jared says, I've been too busy to listen much lately. That's unacceptable, Jared. I'd put everything else aside, man. You guys are freaking out over here, or have you considered or conceded to the craziness? I prefer to embrace the chaos, assume the worst and hope for better. Yeah, I think that anytime that the expectation is set as high as it is. And look, everybody who was at training camp, all the reporters that were there, whether it was Star Tribune, it's Judd, it's Dane, it's the Associated Press, going to do a podcast with Dave Campbell on Friday. I think we all were looking at this team being like, man, this should be a really good football team. But it hasn't been the team we saw in training camp. So you set the expectations way high from what we say and what you guys see, and you guys know football, and you see the way they put together the roster. And I remember a lot of us talking about you guys in the comments of like, hey, they've solved a lot of like long time repeating problems. And they did. They identified a lot of long time repeating problems in the offseason and fixed them. But then they haven't gotten to see the fix. And that's where it is super disappointing for the fans, and where I think you're talking about the rage and the panic comes is when it's not what you expected to see, when you had set a certain level in your brain and then it comes way short of that. That always is a tough thing for any fan base. It was, 2018, that was a nightmare for everybody. It was a nightmare for the fans. It was tough to cover. It was a nightmare for the team, because they had set the bar at a Super Bowl and they win 8 games. Like, that's not, anytime that happens, it's hard. The opposite was last year, where it was set the bar super low and then, beat it. I think obviously that's a lot easier because you don't get your hopes up, but they certainly, I think Vikings fans reasonably got their hopes up for this season. Jackie says all the offseason steam was that this is a championship caliber roster. Very disappointing. This is a fan base to realize that this is a 7 to 9 win team coming off a 14-3 season. Last year was the window. Well, as of right now, it does look that way, that it's more of a 7 to 9 win team. These things do change quickly when they get healthy coming out of the bye, but it doesn't guarantee that no one gets hurt this week and where that goes. I've always said this, and I remember talking about it at the trade deadline last year. I remember talking about this at the trade deadline, where I said, and Dan Campbell said it one time, like, you only get so many chances. You don't get that many in a lifetime unless you have Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Those guys, if you got them, you get a lifetime of chances. You get a decade, 10 shots at winning a Super Bowl. If you have Brady, you get 20 shots at winning a Super Bowl. You don't always do it, but you get that many. It's crazy if you've got that guy. If you don't, you get every once in a while a season that comes your way where it is your season of destiny. And if you don't make good on it and you don't get there, you often live to regret it, because football has this way of the pendulum swinging back and forth, right? But I wouldn't write this off yet. I think it was a championship caliber roster. And if it was just me thinking that, I might think, I'm too close to it and I need to look around at other teams. But even all the, I brought on from SI.com, a good friend of mine, Matt Verderam, and he's talking about them winning the division. And, Robert Mays talking about how strong the roster is. And the national reporters who visited training camp were talking about it. And Mike Clay's ranking their positions very high. It's like, I don't think that you were gaslit on it. I don't think it was something that was a total myth and was made up. I think it just hasn't played out to that its maximum potential, and hasn't been anywhere close to that because of the injuries. And that's just such a boring point to make. And I know I try to think of a million other ways to talk about the things that are happening and where they need to go. But sometimes it just does come down to, if you don't have your offensive line, and you don't have Harrison Smith for 2 games, and you don't have Van Ginkel, and you don't have Cashman, we run through. If you don't have those guys, then you're not the team that we're talking about. Now, if we rank position by position, you don't get that result. You wouldn't say that they have an elite offensive line, but they do on paper when they're fully healthy. That's the frustrating thing about football sometimes, and certain seasons. There is still that. I still think the door is open, though, for them to turn things around and win a lot of games. The door is open for it. You can't guarantee it, but it's not impossible. Jay, who is to blame on the penalties? I think that O'Connell would be the person that I think that always would get the blame, because the coach gets the blame when the team is undisciplined. I think it's probably backup center, backup quarterback, inexperienced quarterback, coach that has a tendency to maybe overload a little bit when it comes to some of the complexity of the play calls. That's happened in the past. It's probably a little bit of everything. Darasaw has jumped offside a couple times, or false started a couple times. And I mean, that's just him not playing a lot. And Jurgens being a backup center, not playing a lot. The guy's never played before. So it's probably that. That's what I would attribute to most. Can John Sullivan come out of retirement? I don't think so. I imagine he's pretty old. Jake Reed and Adam Thielen both started out as special teamers. A lot of guys did. Yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be any Ty Felton dialogue. I think he's doing a great job. I think he's doing a great job in his role. Jay said he was a bad pick. There were better players available. Okay, I know. We love that. Who was drafted right after? Are they great? Then everyone should be fired. I actually don't know. Like, has anyone who was drafted after Ty Felton? He was the last pick in the 3rd round. So we're not really talking about, if he was a 1st round pick, I would be there with you guys. A 3rd round pick's going to have to develop. You just have to be patient. I know you guys hate that. I know that the people who love the draft so much, and like we all do, but I think a problem is you fall in love with the draft and you obsess over these players. And then your expectation is like, why aren't they just great right away? And there's a bunch of players on this roster who have developed. Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond. You saw Xavier Scott, who's been in the league a couple years behind the scenes developing. They're all over the roster. Josh Metellus, a late round draft pick. Cam Bynum got $15 million. He's with Indianapolis. He was a 4th round pick who didn't play his first year. Metellus got cut out of training camp. Gosh, Jordan Mason didn't play right away in the NFL. Had to develop. Like that's how it works sometimes. Jalen Naylor had to develop. I know that he hasn't had a big season, but still. Will Fries, $17 million guard, didn't start right away. Like this happens all the time. Let's see. Cause and effects. And I've heard lots of KOC criticism, which is warranted. Some even saying fire him. But when people are saying this, who is your replacement? Yeah, I think anybody who's saying fire the coach is just looking for attention. Or being just so enraged by disappointment that they're just saying whatever comes to their head. This is why a lot of times if I'm doing a post-game show, I'm not really responding a whole lot to the comments because I understand. And I like talking to you guys, but I understand there is a surge of rage when the team loses where you want every person thrown off the edge of a cliff because the team lost, and it's very disappointing and frustrating and you wasted 3 hours of your morning. I get that. But anybody saying that is absolutely ludicrous. I think you want Kevin O'Connell here for a very, very long time. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, but that doesn't mean he's perfect. And you know what? I have a friend who covers the Baltimore Ravens, and I was asking her about John Harbaugh, and she was talking about all the critiques of John Harbaugh that they have. And we think he's one of the best coaches in the league. Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure if you ask their fans, what about Kyle Shanahan? There would be criticisms. And if you ask people about, as I mentioned, Matt LaFleur, you take all these coaches, there's no coach that's perfect. Mike Tomlin has had a winning record. The guys in first place, again, they've wanted to fire him for years for not winning more with Duck Hodges or Kenny Pickett or whoever other crap quarterbacks they've given him. I would never fire Mike Tomlin. Guy is a great coach. And I would just keep running that back until it works. The same thing with O'Connell, because you can say, well, yeah, maybe they need this or that or the other thing. But I think what a great coach does, he sets a baseline for you and then gives you a chance every single year. And it's not always going to work. And the disappointment of the playoffs is very real and how those have been handled. But I mean, how many did Denny Green lose to start his career? How about, Tom Coughlin was somebody that lost a bunch of playoff games and was on the hot seat and everything else and then wins 2 Super Bowls. When you got a coach, Andy Reid is a good example. I know he got Mahomes, but every year, oh man, all he can do is get to the NFC Championship. Like there's 32 teams, man. If your coach is getting you there, that means he's doing a really good job. So I think that with Kevin O'Connell, even if this is a disappointing year, that discussion is just not in the air for me. CJ says Dillon Gabriel's going to pull a Cooper Rush. We need a quick ranking. And I'm sorry I haven't gotten through all the comments tonight. You guys have been awesome. But I may have to, I got to write this article, so I may have to wrap it up. And then I got a couple of podcasts tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Trying to have as much fun with this week as we can. And the fact that I got in the car accident, that made it tougher. None of you made like a offensive line joke. Like your Honda is still in better shape than the Vikings line. I'm disappointed in you guys. But of the worst backup losses of like the last 10 years or since I got here in 2016, the worst losses the Vikings have had to backup quarterbacks, Cooper Rush has to be at the top. I think the Matt Moore game is probably the worst one because that was all on the Vikings offense falling apart. They had a botched punt because they were afraid of Tyreek Hill back there. And that set up the 55-yard field goal to win it. That to me was probably the worst one. But if we were power ranking, the Cooper Rush game Cooper Rush has turned out to be a good quarterback, but at the time he had never played any games. So I remember at the end of that post-game podcast saying, well, your team just lost to Cooper Rush. Good night. And maybe he deserved a little more respect, but at the time that was really, really rough. Who was the worst backup quarterback that they've lost to? I mean, Matt Moore had barely played for the Chiefs. You guys are going to have to throw me a couple of those. Oh, no, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is clearly an NFL quarterback. He's clearly a starter. Or were you saying, why didn't they keep Daniel Jones? I just saw Daniel Jones pop up. They wanted to. They wanted to keep Daniel Jones. Losing a playoff game, that's probably the worst one. That take, though, is funny because we would say, like, oh, man, well, they lost a playoff game to Daniel Jones. How could you do that? And then that take made a lot of sense for the last 2 years. And then this year, it's like, oh, you lost the playoff game to Daniel Jones, who's a pretty good NFL quarterback. So there you go. Let's see. Enemy cap. Can Justin Jefferson throw it up to himself? He probably can. It's like that old wrestling video that pops up on Twitter sometimes where the wrestler throws it up in the air and runs and catches it. That's Justin Jefferson. He was open a lot. I'm sure he was very frustrated after that game. Definitely very frustrated after that game. So, all right. Well, let's see. Sorry if I missed some comments there. Oh, okay. Jake Browning. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. I think Jake Browning is right. Oh, by the way, for those watching the replay, FanDuel question of the day, make sure you throw that in the comments. Over under for the game went down today with Dillon Gabriel down to 35.5 points. How many points do the Vikings need to win this game is the FanDuel question of the day. You're right that losing to Jake Browning is probably the worst, especially because he had been a Viking. And Browning actually had a good season, so maybe it wasn't that bad. Matt Moore was 35 or something, and Cooper Rush had never really played before, but Browning is probably the worst quarterback of those. KFT says, with improved mix of play calling, the Vikings have a chance to compete. They just, to me, in terms of competing, what they need is to get healthy and to get McCarthy back in there playing. Wentz is only going to get you so far. And if McCarthy comes back, there's a ceiling to that that's higher. And he's more of an athlete, more of a playmaker. You have the running element to that. And there's just limitation. They built the whole offense for JJ McCarthy. They didn't build it for Carson Wentz. It might be a little different if it was built entirely on concepts that worked for him. It was built for McCarthy. So that to me is the higher level. The Browning game was not the one that Delvin fumbled. The Browning game was the T. Higgins, where T. Higgins caught it and mossed them, and it was Mekhi Blackman who was just kind of looking at him. So, Josh Allen beat the Vikings too, but I definitely don't put that one in the category as he's become one of the all-time great quarterbacks. That one was just the worst loss ever, I think, was Chad Hutchinson. They lost to Chad Hutchinson against Chicago. That was probably the worst one, but that's going back. Almost lost to Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell did win some games in the NFL. 24 to 22 points. They need to score to win this game. Yeah, I think 17 to 20 is probably possible. Chase Daniel is a good pull. Yes, they lost that Chase Daniel game where Kirk freaked out and Khalil Mack wrecked the game. And then Diggs went full Diggs. Yeah, that's right. That was a crazy one. After that game, I was there with Sage Rosenfels was helping me cover that game because we were working together at 1500 ESPN, and we couldn't find a good place to do the post-game podcast. So we just left, and we did it in that we did the podcast in that famous park there. What is it called? On Michigan Avenue in Chicago. We just found a spot in that park that's right by the lake. And we just did the podcast there, and it was an afternoon game. I think that started at 4:00. So it's dark out. It's like 9:00 at night. And we're just sitting there with a couple of microphones like weirdos in the park, but not the weirdest thing that was happening there at night in the park. Anyway, stop bashing Kirk. Don't think that I've done any Kirk bashing lately. I guess that's where we've reached we've gone off the rails, but there were a handful of these games that were pretty shocking losses to backups, but most of the time they win them. Usually it happens like Jake Browning or David Blau or something like that. So, okay. Well, anyway, we know at least one person who's got to get blocked, and we'll do that, and then we'll move forward. So, a good show though overall. A good show though overall. I appreciate everybody, and tomorrow night, Manny Hill and I will be doing our thing. With Manny picking the schedule. I'm very interested to see where Manny takes this after the loss, and we'll have a good discussion. Also, going to be recording. I'm not sure about when these podcasts are going to drop exactly, but recording with Emily Liker of the Star Tribune because Andrew Kramer is over in London. So, that will be fun as well. She's going to do the hardcore preview where we go position by position and look at Vikings versus Browns. That'll be a fun show. And Dave Campbell is going to do a porch podcast. There's been construction going on all down my street, and so we're hoping that that is over with by Friday morning. That will happen Friday night. You'll be able to listen to that show. So a lot going on here the rest of the week, and looking forward to this game, I think. So great conversation again tonight, guys, and we'll catch y'all very soon.